All right, welcome to Big Red Banter Podcast, Episode 3. We've had a short absence due to a couple moves and some other stuff going on, but we are back this week. I am Ryan, and this is Kyle. So we wanted to save up some news, so we actually had some stuff to talk about. And we are on the eve of pitchers and catchers reporting for the Reds. So this is as good a time as ever to get this information out and give you some names to look for next week and be ready for the stretch basically towards spring training and the season starting. So we're going to jump right into it. So one quick thing that I wanted to hit on is that it was announced this week that the Nasty Boys are going to be leading the 2015 Reds opening day parade. Pretty cool because I think there was a lot of good publicity around them with that MLB Network special that they had. I've seen a lot more stuff online recently. A lot of cool stuff. I definitely like to see recognition for the 1990 team. The 75, 76 team, Big Red Machine teams always get all the hype. So anytime you can recognize the 90 team, they accomplished something incredible at the beginning of the 90s. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, the 90s was a beautiful team, and it just gets overshadowed a lot and really not talked about. So it's awesome to see that. It's awesome to see Dibble and the boys get to come back. I think fans will just love it. I would love for Dibble to come back and somehow be able to be a part of the Reds in the future or something. That'd be great. So I think it's really cool to have them, leading the parade. That'd be really nice.
Yeah, and as big a deal as that is in Cincinnati, that's really cool. The fans will enjoy that. I know I'm in the process of trying to get things worked out so that I can trek back, hopefully for opening day. So looking forward to that. So, but regardless, opening day is getting close. I'm glad that we're on the home stretch. So baseball will be back soon. So with that, Todd Frazier signing to avoid arbitration was the biggest thing that's come out here recently. He signed 2 years, $12 million deal. He's going to receive $4.5 million in 2015 and $7.5 million in 2016.
For any of you that don't know, that is a steal, absolute steal. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing with Todd Frazier. I think all of us have we've kind of seen what he can be and what he can't be. But a couple things are for sure. So he's 29 years old. He's had 3 seasons, and in those 3 seasons, he's had 1 not so good year and 2 very, very good years. And one thing that was interesting with the arbitration, or the avoidance of arbitration, I started doing some research on the numbers, and some things that I thought were very interesting is that Todd Frazier's numbers this year, or in 2014 rather, were very, very similar to the 2012 season. As you know, he was, candidate for Rookie of the Year in 2012 and an All-Star last year. But I don't feel like as Reds fans he got as much credit for last year as he did in 2012. In 2012, it seemed like everybody was really hyped on Todd Frazier, myself included. And then in 2014, after the 2013 season, it was like people weren't as sure about him. So some of the numbers here, like in 2012, in 465 plate appearances, he hit 273 with a 331 on-base percentage and 498 slugging percentage. In 2014, if you compare that, in 660 at-bats, you're looking at a 273 batting average again, 336 OBP, improved a little bit, slugging dropped a little bit, but in that many more plate appearances, to be that close was pretty incredible to me. So I know I told you about it. I didn't really give Todd Frazier a lot of respect for last year either. I mean, he was an all-star. I'm not taking that away from him, but I wasn't giving him, the kind of hype that he had in the 2012 season. I thought that was really, really cool.
His 2013 season was scary, and it was a sophomore slump. So the good news about it is that was the season that was his down year, and that's a season that's a down year for a lot of players. So it was good that was a particular season that was bad, but it was a scary season. I mean, I've never seen that much head movement in one swing from one guy in my life. It was a scary thing. It looked like it was something that was unfixable. And it's awesome to see that he stepped back from that. He went back to his 2012 numbers, and his 2012 and 2014 are more identical than I even thought. I mean, they were literally right on by just parts of percentages. It's really awesome to see that he could step up and do that. If he, for the next 2 years, puts up those similar type of numbers, that might be one of the most friendly deals in baseball. I mean, you're looking at a guy that could lead your team in a lot of categories. You're looking at a guy that could be a 20-20 guy, or a 30 home run, 20 stolen base kind of guy. And the stolen bases for Todd Frazier, everyone says is kind of a fluke, but hey, if you don't have to be the fastest guy. If you're decent at stealing bases, you're decent at stealing bases. And for him to hit for some decent average while keeping a pretty good on base percentage, that's a very exciting thing for this team, considering most of the guys on this team struggle to hit league minimum from on base percentage.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Todd Frazier is a bad ball hitter. I mean, I don't know how many times we've seen him go down, scoop something out of the dirt and make something out of it. And I think that's where his bad reputation, or people think that he's not going to be able to consistently put up the numbers he is. But, Vladimir Guerrero had a career of being a free swinger, and maybe this is who Todd Frazier is. I mean,
Go ahead. Even if you go towards the current players, Hunter Pence is a very similar player to that. Hunter Pence puts balls out of the park or puts balls in play that don't look like he should have ever even reached it with his bat. And it works for him, and it's been working for him. And that could be the same thing as Todd Frazier. If you get a guy that's got an unpredictable swing like that puts balls into play that pitchers don't even think we're going to get swung at, that's a big asset to have on your team.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I don't know. I think that the 2013 season, in a strange way, kind of did us a favor because he had the down year, and it really helped. I mean, you think about if Todd Frazier even had a decent year, that arbitration number, to avoid arbitration, is going up for sure. So, I mean, I think you could make the argument that it's very possible that 2012 and 2014 Todd Frazier may be who he is. Now, is he gonna put up the same numbers this year? I don't know. Could be better, could be worse, but I don't think that he's gonna dip to where he was in 2012 again. So.
Yeah, the Todd Frazier signing or extension, and the Devin Mesoraco extension, those are two really, really awesome moves by the organization. It's really cool to see them pull off something like that and actually pull off a deal where the money is just so likable. The contract is so likable for what those guys could possibly do. I mean, you're talking about paying roughly $5 million a year for each of them for them to put up 30+ home runs, and who knows how much production from their spots. That's a win-win on both those moves.
Yeah, I mean, keeping the young guys around, especially a couple years at a time, I think that is how this organization has to operate to be successful. Especially with the big contracts that we have, you have to limit what you're doing, and you got to really take it a little piece at a time. And if Todd Frazier and Devin Mesoraco can bring any type of production like we've seen from them in the past, I think you could see the Reds as a contender. I mean, there are factors that are going into it, but this Reds team is not out of it yet. I mean, there's a lot of negativity going into the season.
I think I may have said it to you, but it's a very, very, very delicate situation with this team. It's depending on injuries and depending on who plays to whose potential. This is a Reds team that could literally either fall into last place or the playoffs, and those things could be right on each side of the fence. It's going to be that delicate a situation for this team. This season's going to be the only thing that tells. It's any people like to resort to the Vegas numbers and everything. With this Reds team, there is no way of predicting it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it could easily go one way or another. No doubt in my mind.
What was it? Vegas predicted 76 wins or something like that.
Yeah, the nice part about baseball though is that you never really know. You can't buy team chemistry. If maybe the pieces fall together finally for the Reds this year and they put a run together. I mean, and
I'm not comparing them by any means, but no one expected the '90s Reds team to win either. And you just never know. That's a typical example of you never know what could happen, because that team should have never have won the World Series, but they did. They went wire to wire, and they never have done that, but they pulled it off. So you never know what this team could do.
Yeah, absolutely. So also in the last week, we've also had Aroldis Chapman. We avoided a year of arbitration with them. It wasn't a huge win because he originally filed for $8.7 million and ended up getting 8.05 from the Reds. The Reds' original counter was $6.65 million. I think that they realized that if they let that hang in arbitration, they were going to lose, so any money that they could save at that point was a good move on their part. So that saves us another year with Aroldis Chapman. He still has arbitration eligibility in 2016, and then he's going to be a free agent in 2017.
But my opinion on it. I think the guy should have already been traded. I think the value that you could have got for him, I mean, he is a small injury away from being virtually untradeable. He right now, at his peak in his health, he's at his peak in his performance, and he's at his peak in his contract. His contract's never going to look better. His numbers might never be better. I'm not saying that he's going to turn to a bad pitcher. I'm just saying he put up some ungodly numbers the past couple of years. He is a shoulder injury away from being a terrifying guy to have on your team.
So the thing with the Aroldis is, I don't think there's any chance in hell that Aroldis Chapman is staying here when it comes to free agency.
Oh, no
I don't
way.
think there's any amount of money that the Reds can offer him that is going to keep him in Cincinnati. I know Reds fans love him, but guys, think about what you can get for an Aroldis Chapman. I mean,
these are the Dodgers, or I could even see the Marlins trying to eat him up.
I would love to see him go, because if every year that you hold on to him, that is less that you are able to bring back to the team. I mean, if they trade him at the end of the 2012 season, we could have gotten something crazy for even at the end of the 2013 season.
If they would have traded him earlier in this offseason, I think rather than players paying guys like Andrew Miller or paying guys like that to be in the back end, if they could have traded for an Aroldis Chapman and got him for the contract he's at, I think they would have broke the bank on him. I think we could have got some serious prospects for him and some serious contenders to be in the lineup, this year. And I think they made a big mistake by keeping him. I get the whole thing of this could be a last hurrah type of year, but I mean, does anybody really think keeping Chapman this year is going to get us to the playoffs or get us to a World Series?
I think trading Chapman could have brought key players to possibly put you in that position. The thing is when you're running an organization, everyone likes Aroldis Chapman, but we have pitching depth. So when
Yeah.
you have pitching depth, you have to get rid of pitching to bring more things to the table. That's the reason the Matt Latos and Alfredo Simon deals happen, is because we have depth at pitching, and regardless of whether we have a little bit of competition or we're trying to figure out the rotation at the beginning of the year, we're in a lot better situation if we're trying to figure it out on the pitching side versus everyday lineup
Oh yeah.
situation. And if
I
we trade Aroldis Chapman to bring a bat into the lineup, I mean, I feel like that is something that probably could have been put out on the table, and I don't think that it was used as a trade chip. So
Yeah. I mean, for all we know, maybe it was. Maybe we don't know. Maybe we don't know what happened. But I can't see him being put out there and us not getting good enough deals for him to be gone. I just don't think it would happen. But like as you were saying, the depth in pitching, this translates straight into it as let's talk about some of the guys the Reds just signed for the bullpen, and two guys that I'm actually pretty excited about. One being Kevin Gregg, who was actually a closer in his past too. He was a closer for the Marlins and a closer for the Blue Jays, and had just recently put up some pretty good numbers for the Cubs. He's a back of the bullpen kind of guy. And we signed him to a minor league deal, and they're inviting him to spring training. That could end up turning out very, very good. He's put up some decent numbers. We got him for a pretty cheap. He has a $1.5 million base salary, which that's not bad at all. That's really cheap for a bullpen kind of guy, especially a guy that could hold down a back end of a bullpen if somebody were to falter. So that's a signing I'm pretty excited about. Is it a huge signing? No, but like you were saying, it's depth, and pitching depth you can't ever have enough of.
yeah, the thing with Kevin Gregg is, I mean, we're making a lot of these small signings. The thing with like Kevin Gregg, so Kevin Gregg, you sign him to a contract, you bring him in. He had a tough season last year. He only pitched 10 innings and he gave up he only pitched 9 innings and gave up 10 runs.
Right.
But he also had to have a surgery to remove bone chips from his throwing elbow. So
Yeah.
if he's doing okay now, that's a potential signing that can really help us out. I mean, that, like we were talking about with Todd Frazier, situations like what happened last season with them, that can be something that can bring him in for cheap and actually really help us out and be potential big high side. So
Kevin Gregg's the kind of guy that could come in and end up being almost like a Jonathan Broxton type of guy. He could come in and end up being a what J.J. Hoover was a couple years ago kind of guy, and actually put up some decent numbers and be able to fill in those gaps and mop-up roles and everything that we really need. The guy I'm really excited about, and, this isn't talked about very much at all, but Burke Badenhop. You and me have talked about Badenhop a lot. I mean, he's the kind of pitcher that the Reds need. He's a ground ball pitcher. This dude doesn't have blow you away type of stuff whatsoever. But last year in 70 innings, he gave up 1 home run. If that's not something the Reds need in Great American Ballpark, I don't know what is.
yeah, absolutely. And so he's got they signed him to a 1-year contract with a mutual option for 2016. So it definitely brings a lot to the table. Gets a lot of ground balls. It's going to be a big help. Look, all these small pitching signings, these are all going to be things that going into spring training that we're going to keep our eyes on. So you'll get a lot better feel for what's actually going to pan out based on that. So in addition to that, you had let's see here. We also had Paul Malholm, who signed with the Reds and has a invite to spring training. Haven't heard any financials on that yet.
Haven't either.
But He pitched for the Dodgers last year. His numbers don't look too awful bad. He appeared in 30 games, just under a 5 ERA. But that's something, when you're adding depth, that could easily be turned around for a season and really help us out with the position we're in. So.
Yeah, I mean, you look at guys like Manny Parra, who, the year before they came to the Reds was not doing so hot at all. Came to the Reds, they had the right kind of pitching staff around them, and they ended up turning their little, back into their career around. And that could really happen with Mahomes. I mean, at the worst, what happens? He doesn't make the rotation. He winds up in the bullpen, and he helps us out, and he provides, a strong guy from the bullpen. It's small signings like that end up making a bullpen to where you're not in a situation like the Detroit Tigers, who the bullpen is laughable at best. You know what I mean? And our bullpen last year was getting similar to that. So any kind of signings you have that can strengthen that it's just money in the bank. And it needs to be signings that people need to complain about less and just be all about, because that's the kind of stuff that adds depth. That's the kind of stuff that gets you to playoffs, and that's the kind of stuff that gets you those one-run games. Everyone talks about these one-run games. Well, when you have a guy that comes in a bullpen and doesn't lose you 30 games like our bullpen did last year, when you guys get that can actually be reliable and not just give up runs every time they go out there, that's what wins you these one-run games, not just offense by itself.
I don't think there's personally many ways that our bullpen could get worse than it was in the second half of the year last year. Our bullpen was atrocious in the second half of the year. So, I mean, the more competition we create for spring training, I'm all about that. I think the more you can create, the better off we're going to be.
Well, and the good news is some of these guys aren't just going for bullpen either. Like, you got Mahomes, you got guys like Jason Marquise, who are also going to be trying for the starting rotation. You know what I mean? But, if they're not good enough to be in the starting rotation, they could still help this team out, and I think that's awesome. The rotation, it's got a lot of guys vying for it right now. You got, a mixture of Tony Cingrani, who's definitely, if he can pull his health together, he's got a fast track. You got DeSclafani, who we just got in the Matt Latos trade, who's also, I think, got a big fast track. You got Dylan Axelrod, who did a decent job for us last year. You got Daniel Corsino, who's going to be trying his best. You got David Holmberg, who's going to be trying for it. You got Paul Maholm,
Raziel Iglesias, who is the big one that Brian Price is talking about.
Oh yeah, 7-year, $27 million contract last summer. Sounds a lot for a guy that's never pitched in the majors, but then you look at a signing like Aroldis Chapman. They're coming from the same place, or they're coming from down south. They're coming from a different part of baseball, but they've had a lot of success. And Brian Price couldn't stop praising him the last time he spoke of him. Said that his velocity was between 93 and 97. Said he had action on his fastball. He said his changeup was way better than he expected, which is really good to hear, because a good changeup can just eat guys alive. Then he said both of his breaking balls, which I'm pretty sure is a slider and a curveball, if I'm correct. He said,
I think so.
He said both of them were definitely quality pitches that were definitely major league ready. So I mean, if you got a guy that can come in and do that, you never know what it can bring to the table. If you want my prediction, I think the back two spots there were two, because the first three are definitely going to be Cueto, Bailey, and Leake. Obviously, with Simon and Latos gone, you need to fill two spots. I think those two spots, and this is my personal opinion, we'll start seeing this more as pitchers and catchers report. But my personal opinion is, I think Raisel Iglesias, I think DeSclafani, I think both of them are going to get the rotation spots. I think you're going to end up seeing Cingrani either in the minors to work on some stuff, or you're going to see him as a part of the bullpen.
Has there been any news on whether he's actually 100% healthy or not?
I don't know.
Do they know? Because it was a stress-related injury, right? Does anybody know whether he's 100% or not?
I haven't heard anything about it. I'm assuming we're going to start hearing more about that kind of stuff as pitchers and catchers report. Same thing with Homer Bailey. I don't think they've said too much more on if he's going to be ready. It's not looking like Homer Bailey might be ready yet. So Um, we might end up seeing 3 guys vying for spots at first while we're waiting for Bailey to be ready or whoever. But I imagine as soon as pitchers and catchers start reporting, we'll start hearing more on health updates. We'll hear, I'm sure, a lot more on Sean Marshall. We'll hear on. Do we still have Brett Marshall? Is that the case? I know last year he was vying for a spot in the rotation or a bullpen, and he ended up straining a ligament in his finger.
I think
Uh,
we still have him.
so I mean, you got him, who's actually a serviceable pitcher. So you could end up seeing Brett Marshall in the bullpen as well. So pitching, I think, is going to be a lot less of a worry than people think it is. And people are freaking out a lot because, Simon's gone, Lato's gone. The bullpen was atrocious last year, but a lot of guys are set to, you know, have a lot better of a year than they did last year. You got to think that J.J. Hoover and Sam LeCure are going to have worlds better years than they did last year. J.J. Hoover, a lot of people want to crucify the guy for how bad he was last year. That was an organizational failure there. When a guy is struggling that hard, you got to do something. You got to stop sending him out there and get his brains beat out. You can obviously see his mechanics are messed up. If you look at his 2012 and 2013 seasons, he was a great pitcher. He was an awesome part of our bullpen. He had under a 3 ERA both years. He looked great. He was pitching great. At one point, he had 30 innings without being scored on. 2014, there was something in his mechanics that he was just getting teed off on.
I don't know if it was so much mechanics as it was that they just killed his confidence. I mean, he got rocked a couple times, and rather than put him in situations to regain confidence, they're running him out there in another bases loaded situation with Matt Holliday at the plate, who is literally is a Reds killer, and they're sending him out there in that situation rather than with a nice little cushion to regain confidence.
They did the same thing with Curtis Parch. They literally sent Curtis Parch into his first major league game with bases loaded to face Matt Holliday, and he gave up a grand slam.
Yeah, feed him to the wolves, man. I don't understand it. So,
but J.J. Hoover. The reason why I was saying I think it might have to do with his mechanics is he said this offseason he worked a lot with Sam LeCure and lost some weight. Said that he started doing yoga to help with his balance and release point. So I think you're going to see a lot different of a pitcher in J.J. Hoover. Anytime he's asked about it, he was asked about it in Reds Fest a couple times, he was not shy about it. He said he can't do that again. He said what he did his year was not acceptable. He doesn't know what it was, but he can't let it happen again. And
yeah,
it was good to see a guy just take ownership and just take responsibility and just say, I'm going to do better.
Yeah, I've seen lots of pictures of him and Sam LeCure already tossing at Great American Ballpark. Some other guys working out with them too. So I know they're really excited to get there. That was basically all we have for this week. So we're really excited. I've got a stack of baseball movies sitting right underneath my TV right now that this week I will be. Oh, of course. I have Field of Dreams, Bull Durham, 42, 61. Think about what else I got. And then I every season going into the actual season around spring training, I always watch the Ken Burns baseball documentary on Netflix too. So I've got all that stuff lined up. I'm trying to pull myself out of the winter blues and start working towards spring as soon as possible.
Yeah, Netflix actually has some pretty decent baseball selections right now on there too. So if you're at home and you're getting antsy and you want to watch some stuff, at least hit up Netflix and check some different baseball movie shows out on there.
Highly recommend Battered Bastards of Baseball if you've not watched it yet.
Great.
Absolutely incredible.
I thought it was awesome.
And one other quick hit is that ESPN Fantasy Baseball opened up this week, so I'm sure you'll hear a lot of trash talk between Kyle and I, especially on weeks when we play against each other. So definitely huge fantasy baseball fan, so you'll hear some of that come into the conversation, I'm sure, coming up soon. But super excited for that to open up. It's funny coming out of the off season. Every small thing that gets you closer to opening day is just something I look forward to. So We currently are at 47 days till opening day, and like we said, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. So more news to come. We'll have more stuff coming from Arizona. Super, super excited. Kyle, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we close?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, just keep reporting in, keep checking up on us. We're going to start talking about spring training. We're going to start talking about the arms and the catchers, and we're excited to hear about it. We're excited, just as much as you guys are to hear, whose stuff is where it needs to be, who's in shape, who's not in shape, who's injured. So I mean, we're going to from here on out, it's all baseball.
All right. So just like I always say at the end of this, so I know we're just getting started, but we definitely like to hear from everybody. We have a Twitter, Big Red Banter Podcast. We also have an email address. You can email us at bigredbanterpodcast@gmail.com. Actually, the Twitter handle is Big Red Banter PC. I'll get that straight one of these days. I screwed that up 2 weeks ago too. So, and then we also have a WordPress. Yeah, I know. It won't let me do a longer one, so that's what it's going to be. So, and then we have a WordPress that we also post these on, and YouTube, so you can subscribe to us on there. So, WordPress.com, search for Big Red Banter Podcast. You can pull us up on there. So. All right, in closing, so 47 days till opening day. We'll see you guys next week to talk more about what's going on in spring training. So, see you later.
Go Red Legs.